He's an actor, a playwright, and a director and producer of feature films who is inspired to bring the life of Saint Thérèse of Lisieux and other saints to the big screen. We'll talk to him about life on both sides of the camera tonight, so please stay with us. Thank you and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa. Welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. Before we get to tonight's guest, just want to mention that today is the Holy Day of Obligation, the solemnity of the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary. This means that Mary was conceived without sin. And even in the 2nd century already, the fathers of the church were starting to call Mary the new Eve. And we remember that Eve was also created without original sin, just like Adam was. And there was a reason I mentioned that. A friend of mine was on the internet last night, and somebody was complaining about the Immaculate Conception. The lady said that she left the church because she couldn't believe that Mary was without sin, because that would make her God. And we have to say, no, it doesn't. It makes her a human being without original sin, just like Adam and Eve were. Adam and Eve weren't God. As a matter of fact, they became sinners when they tried to act like God and know what God knows. But they were conceived without original sin, and that's what it means to be truly human. And the Blessed Virgin Mary was the most truly human since Adam and Eve. But she never fell into sin, and the Lord used her, filled her with grace, because she was saved from original sin by the grace of God. And by being filled with grace, there was no room for sin in her life, so that she could be the proper one to raise our Lord Jesus Christ, to give birth to him and bring him up in this world. So we celebrate this great feast of the Immaculate Conception today. Now, our guest tonight knows the blessings and the trials of sainthood in a unique way. He formed St. Luke Productions in order to bring the lives of great Catholic saints to people around the country, and through his stage and film productions. So please welcome tonight's guest, Leonardo Defilippis. Leonardo.
Thank you, Father Mitch.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Good to have you back.
Yeah, it's good to be back here on EWTN.
Yeah, it's been a little while since we had you. And when you were last here, Therese was just coming out.
Therese would just come out in the movie theaters.
Right. Now, tonight, we're going to be doing something very special, which is to show Therese right after this show is over. It's going to be the whole feature length is going to be shown on EWTN tonight. And this is a good opportunity to talk to you again about what's, the film and all this. First of all, just to remind our audience, why did you choose to do this feature film on Therese?
Well, we chose to do the feature film on St. Therese, first of all, because the Carmelites approached me, the Carmelite nuns in the country wanted me to do the film to honor her life. So I undertook that challenge. But really underneath it all, it was because I have a great devotion to her, as does my wife. And we felt that this was a worthy project to do. And so we wanted to really spread devotion to St. Therese. And I think what inspired me really were two things. Once I met this priest and I asked him, should we do this movie or not? Because I knew if I did it, it was going to be so much work, so much risk, so much obstacles. And so he said to me, Leonardo, do not be afraid. Cast your net into the deep. And so I did. And then that re-echoed what Pope John Paul II always used to say, do not be afraid. Open wide the doors to Christ. And so I thought, this is an opportunity. Let's bring St. Therese, the most popular saint in modern times, create a feature film that could spread devotion to her throughout the whole world.
Well, there's nothing like having some nuns ask you to do something, is there?
It's hard to refuse the nuns. I have to admit that. And probably everybody at EWTN understands that when they talk to Mother Angelica. So, which I've had the pleasure to even, she's seen the movie privately, and I've been able to perform for her privately, so it's been a great honor. So, but that's one reason we really did do it, out of the sincerity of the love of her family, so to speak, the Carmelite nuns, so that we could bring her to the world in a special way, in this way, unique way, to have a more living encounter with the actual person of St. Therese.
What is it that is such an attraction to Therese? You know, she's obviously an attraction to you personally. It's not just the nuns who are asking to do this. You yourself have a devotion to her. What is it about St. Therese that is so attractive?
Well, I think one thing that's so attractive about her, I think, is that she seems so accessible to others, in that she is, a middle-class person. She had the same problems. She was fragile, emotional. She was weak. She felt like she could never accomplish a lot of things, and I think a lot of us really feel that way. We feel, we have a facade that we want to put on to, get the job or get the part or get whatever it is in this life, but she somehow felt that she couldn't do that, particularly her journey to God. And I think a lot of us feel that way. And so she basically really surrendered to God. And I think that's ultimately, for me, that's one of the great attractions, that she opens the door to surrender to God, so that she gives us the confidence that God will take care of us. And I think it comes back to a great hope of St. Therese is a sign, I think, of really the future coming, in that she has an unshakable, once she gets to her conversion and everything, she has an unshakable faith in the church, that Jesus truly will accomplish everything through the person who surrenders to him. And I think a lot of us are just wanting that to happen. And I think the other side of the coin is that people connect with her on a relationship, that they have a one-on-one relationship with her, so that they ask for her help, her intercession, because her story is so enchanting in the sense that she really promises to help others, to give her life, and especially her great promise of spending to do good in heaven, on earth. And so I think that attraction of sending down a shower of roses, really people are drawn to ask for her help, and she certainly responds.
Now, one of the things that I think is very important is, that a lot of people don't even know about that. When you say she sends down a shower of roses, tell us a little bit more about that, because for a lot of folks, they don't know her background well enough to understand it.
Right. Well, that's in the story, when she wrote The Story of a Soul, her autobiography. She talks about roses were important in her family. First of all, her father had a rose garden, and roses are one of the more beautiful, flowers in the world. But also, it is a kind of a symbol of Mary. It's a symbol of the church, in a sense, the purity, beauty. And so she uses that symbol, the rose, that when she's dying on her deathbed, she promises to her sisters on her deathbed, Pauline and Celine, that she will send down a shower of roses from heaven to give us a sign that God loves us, that he'll take care of us. And so I think that's what's happened. So people now will pray to her, and they say, please, Therese, I'm having trouble with my marriage, or please, I can't get through my studies, or I'm in a foxhole in war, please protect me from death, or my comrades, and please send me a sign. Show me that you're with me. And a lot of times people ask for a sign of roses, and she sends them. And even if you don't ask them sometimes, she sends them anyway.
Yeah.
And that's happened to countless, thousands and thousands of people throughout history. So it's just a little touching thing.
But not a very long history, because she's only been dead just over 110 years.
That's right. Yeah, she died in 1897. So you're right. So she really is a modern saint, but it is remarkable the popularity that she holds throughout the whole world. She's almost like St. Francis of Assisi used to be, universally the most attractive saint, but it's almost like he is the courteous young man saying, okay, young lady, you come open, here's the door, I open the door for you. And you see her just blossom throughout the whole world and almost every country, every language in the world.
I remember back some years ago in the 90s when her relics made a tour around the world, and they came to Dallas, Texas, where I lived at the time, and the line was just huge. I wouldn't have been able to see her if I weren't a priest, because we had Mass, so I got into the Mass to celebrate the Mass with the other priests. But if it weren't for that, I probably wouldn't have been able to see the relics, because the line was so long.
It's unbelievable, the response. And then when she went around the world, and be it Russia or Lebanon or Iraq or all the places she's been in the world, she's the most traveled saint in the world. She's even been in outer space, her relics.
What do you mean in outer space?
Well, she wanted to, remember she wrote that she would like to preach the gospel on all continents at the same time. So an astronaut went to the Carmelite monastery in Houston, Texas, and said, "Sisters, what can I do for you?" And they said, "Take the relics of St. Therese up into space." So she's zipping around the globe, as fast as you can think. So it's just it's amazing, really.
Yeah.
We used to call her relic shoe. They called it the Rolling Bones tour.
The Rolling Bones.
Because there was, they were going everywhere.
Right.
And the response was amazing. So
everywhere her bones went there with long lines. And sometimes people they had to stop it because they had to close it down and go to the next place.
And that's why it really it kind of prepared the way, particularly for our film, when the film came out, that it kind of opened that door.
One of the things about her is that she had some sisters who already had joined the Carmel.
Right.
And she had some struggles with her own call to become a Carmelite, because that it was going to be very difficult for her father. Her mother was already dead, and her father was going to be very much alone, and it would be very much a struggle for him. Tell us a little bit about her own struggle to enter the Carmelites.
Well, I think she's attracted to her first sister, Pauline, the oldest sister of the 5 girls, enters the monastery, and she doesn't want to lose her because she becomes the second mother. As you mentioned, the mother dies when she's 4 years old. And so that really creates an insecurity in her, as it would any child who loses a mother at that age. So she's clingy and very fragile, emotional, cries at the drop of a hat, and she's attracted to going to Carmel and wanting to go where Pauline's going. So she has this in her heart, but she doesn't know how to go there. And so as time goes on, she becomes more and more depressed, more and more self-centered in her. In a sense, she's being tempted by the devil to focus on herself and her problems. And then when she goes to see her sister at the monastery, she gets more attracted. Then ultimately what happens is really on Christmas Eve, when she's 14 years old, she has a conversion, a complete conversion, where then she now is completely open to God, and she realizes she's being called to the Carmelite life, even at that age. So she has to get special permission at 15 to go to the monastery, and she has to win over her father to do that.
As a matter of fact, we've got a clip of that scene where she's leaving her dad. Let's take a look at that.
Let's watch this.
What's the matter, my little queen? Tell me.
I don't want to hurt you, Papa.
Tell me. Don't be afraid.
Papa, I have to fly away.
You're awfully young to be making such a serious decision. Perhaps in a few years, when you're older, you can...
No, Papa, now. Jesus is calling me to the monastery now. I cannot resist his love any longer.
All I want in life is what makes you happy and is pleasing to God. Look at this little flower. Think how much God must love it to bring it into being and to keep it alive in the moss. See, it still has its roots. Maybe it's destined now to live on in another soil more fertile than the moss.
Oh, Papa, thank you.
So this was the scene where he gave her permission to go on ahead, and she still had to get a more official permission to be able to enter. So she had his permission. But later on, it was very difficult for him being alone. Tell us a bit about that.
Well,
because you played the father.
I played Louis Martin. Yes, it was a great honor to do such an incredible man, because Saint Therese always called him not only the king, as he called her the queen, but she always also called him the saint, because he was such a saintly father. So she looked up to him so much. But you're right. He gives permission to her, and then they have to go to the bishop to get permission there, and that still is a little guarded. And eventually they have to go all the way to the Holy Father. And even there at the Holy Father, she's dragged away in her kind of trying to ask the Holy Father to get permission too. And he doesn't really understand. So those Swiss guards have to take her away. And so eventually she just prays. She starts to do little things, surrendering to God. And then what happens then eventually that they do get permission. She gets a letter to give her permission to come. And it's just like a heavenly sign from God. There's such joy. And then eventually, but she has to wait 3 months. And that was hard for her to wait 3 months. They asked her to do that. And so eventually she goes with her father, and it's a very touching scene where they meet for the last time outside the convent. And then she goes in. And so it's a very touching story. And for me, at the end, and then Louis Martin starts to have a mental illness. He has troubles. And then probably one of the most moving scenes in the movie is that they meet for the last time when he's dying, and he can't say anything at all. He only finally at the end he looks up at Thérèse in her eyes and says, "In heaven," and then he's wheeled away in his wheelchair. So it's a very hidden, mysterious relationship that these two have that will really be cemented in heaven, and she really understands the spirit of her father, which is who suffered so much as she had to suffer in the convent.
Isn't his cause being advanced as well?
Yes, they were beatified.
Right.
Both of them, and now
by both of them, you mean the
Zélie,
mother and the father?
Zélie and Louis. Yes, so it's quite an amazing feat. I mean, who knows? They may all eventually be beatified and canonized. They were such a really a beautiful family, a model family, really,
right,
for our times especially.
Right. The process, though, is one in which inside the convent she still has a lot of growth to go through.
She has to go through a lot.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, a little of that is she goes through a lot of resistance. Not every nun likes her. She has a lot of opposition. She's not very good at what she does. You got to remember, she didn't even know how to use a broom, or she never washed a dish. She was spoiled. Everybody took care of her. So all of a sudden now she's in a manual labor type of situation. All the women have to work hard. So she's not used to that, the rigors of the monastery.
Right,
so she throws herself into it and kind of bumbles here and there. And so she has to slowly learn to give up her will. And she discovers or kind of her little invention called the little way, where she has to now, when somebody says something against her, she has to use that and not respond negatively, and then she uses that to pray for souls, and so it's a remarkable journey that she has. How the hidden life is so rich. You feel like you're watching the explosion of this hidden life trying to journey forward, and she slowly, as I mentioned earlier, she surrenders. She was the type that said, "Well, I'm not doing very well. I'm not very good at anything. Matter of fact, I probably can't even go up the first step. And there's the Father. He's up there. So the only way I can get up those steps is the Father comes down, he picks me up, and he carries me right up the steps.
So she's still kind of a spoiled brat.
Yeah, she's spoiled, but she has this sense that God the Father, that Christ, will take care of everything.
Right.
And that there's something touching about that, like every father, who has a precious daughter, always, even to whatever age they are, you always have that special relationship with them.
Right. It's it's one of those things where she was a spoiled child, and in a certain sense, she loses that in a way. In another way, she never loses that, because she just says, okay, Lord, I just have to let you do this.
Right, exactly. And then she goes into a period of great darkness, where almost for 3 years there is no contact with God in her life, meaning, in other words, she feels no presence of God. And she calls this her fog, or it's her dark night of the soul. And so she has to persevere by pure faith, as she says, and to go forward. And even on her deathbed, she feels she's just so weak. Is she going to even make it through death? Will she be? But she realizes that God will take care of it. And then her moving death, God gives her the grace of actually seeing. They meet face to face before she dies.
Right.
And so it's very touching.
As a matter of fact, as I recall from her biography, that she was strongly tempted during death. During the process of when she was sick, she had tuberculosis, I recall.
Right.
And a common killer back in those days. And, she was strongly tempted during that to give up, but she didn't. And her sisters and her confessor were all very supportive of her at that time.
And the devil appears to her, frightens her, and it's actually what we call the Virgin of the Smile. They actually, when she was a child, she was so sick she was going to die, but they brought in the Virgin of the Smile, and she could hardly talk. She was thrashing and everything, as you'll see in the movie. And then the Blessed Mother, actually, she lifts up and it almost glows, and the Blessed Mother cures her right there.
Wow.
So it's a good day to be cured on
yes.
Especially this day we're talking.
Especially on this feast day of the Immaculate
So she had a
Conception.
very close relationship, of course, with the Blessed Mother.
Yeah. You talked a bit about the troubles that she had with the sisters. There was one old elderly sister that she was supposed to help take care of that was very difficult for everybody. Talk a little bit about her.
Well, there's an old cranky nun who is always, kind of on her own. She's like we have in almost every monastery, in every family, this cranky old lady. And so she didn't really appreciate St. Therese. And she'd have her do this or that, and so her name was Sister St. Pierre. And so there's a funny scene in the movie where she has to take care of her. And it's all, again, where she's discovered doing this little way. And as she's taking this nun, she's helping her out of her chair, and she's not liking the way she moves her. Don't pick me up that way. No, you're doing it wrong, type of thing. She kind of hears music in her ear. It's like there's dancing. There's like a symphony. And she sees walking this nun down just a monastery hallway is a great joyful moment in her life. And it's one of the humorous scenes, in not only in the story of a soul, but in the movie itself. Right.
And one of the things that was the irony of it, after St. Therese had died, that same cranky old nun said, that young girl was the only one who ever took care of me, right?
And she was the only one who she liked her. There's another nun, too, our Sister Augustine, who this actually happened to. She was always nice to her, and Sister Augustine never liked her throughout the whole monastery, through her monastery experience. When Therese dies is only when she finds out that Therese had troubles with her, that she really was irritated with her because it hurt her, the things she did to her, but she never said anything negative about it. And only it was later on in the story of a soul where she wrote about it that we even knew anything, that she had to sacrifice, when we do something for someone.
Yeah, she kept that very much, to herself as part of her own offering of a union with Jesus suffering.
Right, exactly.
And that was a very important element of her spirituality, was it not?
Very, very important. I think that's very much the key of the little way, that even whatever you do, as she said, if you pick up a pin on the ground, do it for Christ, to save a soul, to do everything that you do, that's for love of God. And so it took all the littlest minutia. And I really think what's so important about her, she's kind of like from the Old Testament, how God comes as a little whisper. Doesn't come as a thunderbolt or lightning. But she comes just that God comes as a whisper. And St. Therese takes that kind of symbolism. She lives her life that way. In this hidden way, she does things just a quiet whisper until she dies. And then she's called the hurricane.
Is that right?
Things explode.
Well, in that same passage in 1 Kings chapter 19, there is a hurricane at the first, but she's got it reversed. Instead of the hurricane coming first, the still small voice comes first, and then the hurricane.
Right. That's her symbolism of her life, really.
Yeah, one of the things I often quote, as a matter of fact, I go to the Holy Land. I'll be going next week. And one of the things I love quoting when I'm on the Sea of Galilee is we'll read the story of Jesus asleep in the boat and then the apostles waking him up and calming the sea and saying to the disciples, "Are you little faith?" And I love that the way that she describes it as Jesus saying, she says, sometimes it feels as if Jesus is asleep and he's not helping me. But I don't want to wake him up because I don't want him to tell me, "Oh, you a little faith."
That's right. That's right. Well, in making this movie, it was really like it was such a risk to do it because I felt like we were like, the Jews in the desert of the Old Testament, where we're having just to rely totally in faith in God and going forward. But that was really, in a sense, St. Therese helped us to go forward with that vision of staying in the desert, so to speak, and relying on God.
That is a big risk, making a feature film, and this is not something that you're doing on a little Brownie 8. This is a big deal, and it's a lot of money involved and a lot of people working very hard. That's a lot of risk that you had to take there. It
was a huge risk, and I think we were one of the smallest organizations ever to undertake making a feature film, and we had to do it all through donations. And in fact, we ran out of money, kept running out of money as we made it, and God would just send the money right at the right time. So it was actually a crazy event or a mad journey that we made. But God, we had to go forward and just believe that it would work.
Well, believe me, we understand that here at EWTN because that's the way everything worked here. We need to take a little break.
Sure.
If you're interested in finding out more about this whole production, you can go to the website, which is www.stlukeproductions.com, and it's STLUKE Productions, stlukeproductions.com. And you can find out more about Therese and the other productions that they do. We're going to take a break right now. We'll be back in a couple minutes. We want to get your questions and your comments, and as well as those of our studio audience, so please stay with us. Thank you and welcome back. I just want to let you know that Therese, the movie, and the soundtrack to the movie are both available through EWTN's Religious Catalog. You can go to Religious Catalog to get those, as well as all of our other great products, at 1-800-854-6316. That's 1-800-854-6316. And you can also go to the website, www.ewtnreligiouscatalog.com, and they'll help you find all that material. And also, we have a nice little audience here from different parts of the country, from Texas and Colorado and Louisiana and Philadelphia, all sorts of places that we have represented here. And we'd love to have you come and join us, too. If you have a chance to come be part of our pilgrimage audience, we'd love it. You can contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. That's 205-271-2966. Or go to the website, www.ewtn.com. And they'll help you with scheduling about when we're going to have programs. We can be in the studio audience. They'll give you the schedule for the masses, both here and at the shrine, maps to how to get up to the shrine. And also they'll help you with accommodations and good places to eat. We have a lot of good places here to eat, you know. Some of our restaurants have a religious theme. Yeah, it's true.
That's true.
We've got Hamburger Heaven. That's religious. We've got Golden Rule Barbecue. And that's religious, you know. So we've got all kinds of things here for you to do. And we'd love to have you come and join us here in beautiful Irondale, Alabama. Are you ready for some questions?
Yes, I am.
All right. Let's go to a caller. We have Kathy on the line. Hello, Kathy.
Hello, Father Mitch and Leonardo. I saw the movie.
First of all, where are you from, Kathy?
Oh, I'm calling from New Jersey.
Great. And what's your question?
Yes, I saw Therese 7 times and brought it into my local theater, but I'd like to have Leonardo comment on maybe some little incidents and miracles that happened during the taping or the filming of the show, the movie, and also to elaborate on the musical score, which is so unbelievably beautiful. And thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Those are both great questions.
That's great. I'm so honored that the first question comes from New Jersey because that's where my wife's from, so I'm honored. That's good. Well, to answer your question, a number of things have happened. First of all, when it was in the movie theaters, oftentimes the fragrance of roses would happen in secular theaters. This was a common occurrence, and we heard about it from all over the country. But on a more touching note, how it affected certain situations where Therese worked so well. I remember very well a man in a wheelchair. He was a young man. He got paralyzed. He was bitter against God for having this tragedy in his life. And his mother was with him. And they came to the movie. She brought him. He didn't want to come to the movie because he was still angry with God, and he had to become of all things, a religious movie, you know, and it had to be a religious movie on a saint. So what happened was, during the course of the movie, he slowly breaks down and surrenders to God, and he's crying, and the mother, of course, is watching him, seeing her son being engaged with Saint Therese, and she starts to weep. So there was this real conversion for this young man. Or another time I was sitting in Puerto Rico. I was next to the classmate who went with Albert Einstein. He was a scientist. And it was during this moment he saw the movie there. I happened to be there for the premiere. And he really had a revelation. He could never respect or understand St. Therese. And the little way finally clicked with him. And God took away all the intellectuality that he had, and he would see the essence of the pure relationship with God. Or another time, it was shown by a Presbyterian chaplain before they took the DVD of all things and brought it to all these young girls that had been sexually abused. And so they showed it to them, and it was a terrible thing because it would have to do with family, etc. And so, but they all were so engaged that it was a huge healing moment for every one of them, because they saw in St. Therese this girl, this pure person who could help them. And so they all kind of became to have a devotion to St. Therese deeper. And there was countless stories like this when she went into the prisons, when we showed it in the prisons, how it touched prisoners. And even this was one of the last movies that Pope John Paul II saw when he was at Castel Gandolfo before he died. So there's many stories, countless stories of many people becoming priests and nuns. So it's just been overwhelming, really, just as her book was. But it just shows you that that's God's work. We were just pure instruments in making the movie for St. Therese.
Also, she asked about the music. Tell us a little bit about the score of the music.
Well, the music is very unusual. It's the first musical score of a movie written by a nun, by a religious nun who happened to be a Carmelite nun. And she has a great talent, and she went, and this is the first thing she ever did. She got permission to write the music, and she wrote one, I believe, one of the most beautiful movie scores, very touching. In fact, the person who was helping with the movie in Hollywood, he had worked on movies like Spider-Man and all these other type of movies. He was so touched by it that he made us present it to the Academy Award during that year when it was out, just so we could at least get it in there in the of course, huge competition, and nobody knew who St. Therese was that much. But it is really a touching, and I really encourage all your listeners at EWTN to really reach out and get that soundtrack, because it'll make you weep if you listen to it.
Okay, great. We have a question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
San Antonio, Texas.
Great, good to have you here.
Thank you.
And what is your question?
Well, I was just wondering, where was the movie filmed?
The movie was filmed in Oregon, the state of Oregon, and Washington. And we chose those areas. First of all, we're there, but we were able to find places that look like Normandy, France. And so that's why we chose that area. And also, in addition, we went to France itself, to Normandy, and we also went to Rome, where we performed there. Where we filmed there. So we were able to, we matched the exteriors, and then we created a lot of the interiors in the United States.
Okay. All right, so that's pretty, it was an international filming project.
It was an international filming project. Okay. It was a big undertaking for us.
Well, no wonder, and to do so on such a low budget was also an added challenge, I'm sure. Very
big challenge, particularly because we're doing a period piece. You're doing the Victorian age with the beautiful dresses that the women had to wear and the men, and so you had to really be attentive to detail so that you were historically accurate to have the feel of the time of that period.
Right.
So.
All right, good. We have another caller on the line. We have Nabil. Hello, Nabil.
Hello, Father.
How you doing?
Fine, thank you. I'm calling from Michigan.
Great.
Hello, Leonardo.
Hello there.
My question is, I'd like to see a movie about Blessed Miguel Pro. Do you plan to do any more movies about saints or about, Blessed Miguel Pro? And Father Mitch, is it still Blessed Miguel Pro or is it Saint Miguel Pro?
I'll answer that first. It's still Blessed Miguel Pro. He's not been canonized yet. So I guess they're still waiting for another miracle. But are you planning to do a movie on...
Well, it's interesting you ask that because it is one of the movies in our lineup that we'd like to do on the life of Blessed Miguel Pro. So I hope in the future that we can. We are getting requests to do so many different films, but he would be a fantastic saint to present in the film world so that we could see him, the physical and encounter with him, because it's a very dramatic story.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. He was himself an actor.
Yes, he was. He was pretty good at protecting himself during the Revolution. But we're also planning to do a film. I'm trying to do one on the Gospel of John, on St. Augustine, and also our current show on St. John Vianney, the Curé of Ars, that we would like to do an eventual feature film on that also. So we've still got quite a few saints to still cover. And
you've already done one on St. Francis, is that right?
We've done St. Francis, St. Maximilian Kolbe, St. John of the Cross. So I think there's a few more saints left to do.
Yes, there are. That's one of the great things that we have is there are plenty of saints out there.
Yes.
We don't run out of them.
Yes.
That's good.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to another studio audience question. Ma'am, where are you from?
Omaha, Nebraska.
Great. And what is your question?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for the movie. St. Therese is a favorite saint. Our oldest daughter is named Teresa Rose for that reason. But I want to ask, I think for St. Therese it was easy to do the little way because she was cloistered. And us in this noisy world, how can we practice it? Can you give me some suggestions?
Well, to answer your first part of your question about that it was easier for St. Therese in the monastery, not necessarily. The monastery, there is kind of a misunderstanding in about religious life sometimes, that we're in the world and we're having to deal with whatever it might be, all the different work. We have to find a job, we got to do this, we got to do that. It's hard to raise a family. But in the monastery, it's hard to live in a monastery. If you've ever had to live with a number, in her case, she had to live with, I think, 24 nuns, 24 women. To live with 24 women all the time, from elbow to elbow, 24/7 is not that easy either. No. We always think the grass is greener on the other side. St. Therese suffered a lot in a monastery. She was never thought as something, a person special, or that she was very good at anything, in fact. And so she did have a rough time there. So it was not really easy. Plus, God tested her there, as has happened throughout church history with a lot of religious in monasteries. If you think of her patron, St. John of the Cross, one of the greatest doctors of the church, I mean, you're talking about incredible suffering. His famous line was, "Love suffering." And St. Therese is actually one of the truest daughters of St. John of the Cross, because she had to suffer so much. And a lot of people don't see that, because it seems like, when we see the quietness of life, it seems regimented, etc. They had to live without no heat. They had to do great penance. She had to fast all the time. It's very strict. They can't ever have meat. They don't have the goodies of what we have today. But to answer the other side of the coin, it is difficult in the world. And how do we do that? We have a million distractions. We have everything under the sun to tempt you. You can't go to a supermarket or watch hardly television or listen to the radio or whatever media it is by being bombarded with everything. And so I think the application that Therese and the saints are calling us to do is to stay focused, keep your eyes on Christ, so that you can persevere. And I think St. Therese is a good example. You have to remember that one of her first child, before she enters the monastery, she in a sense tests God. And she hears about a murderer, and he killed all these women. His name was Pranzini. And she actually says, "I'm going to pray for his complete conversion." And at the end, he resisted God, but when he went to the guillotine, he broke down and kissed the cross and asked forgiveness. And so to her, knowing that happened, she said, God answered my call. And so that is the kind of focus and zeal that we have to have in daily life, that if we sacrifice, say, not doing something, helping others, not ourselves all the time, that's going to make a better society, a better family life. So, and the Martin family, St. Therese's family, is a model family for that. So I believe that we should have a real connection with every religious, just like you think Mother Angelica's life was easy. It isn't. There's a lot of, or a priest's life. People get, they think, he just says Mass and that's it. What's he doing back there? Just reading that book over there. There's a lot of things that people don't know. So I think that we just need to, to really, Therese is saying, ask Jesus for help. He'll help you.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think that's an important point. And the little way is something that, it's not complicated, and it doesn't require a lot of, academic research or anything like that at all. It's very simple, but that doesn't mean that it's easy.
Exactly. I got a call from Los Angeles. I remember same kind of thing with an interview, and the woman said, "It's so wonderful, the little way, but it's so hard to do."
Right.
And it really is, because it's hard when your husband or your daughter says something to you and you want to, bite right back with a word. It's hard to say, "No, I'm going to control myself. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to kill her with kindness."
But I'll kill her. No. All right, let's go to another caller. We have Tony on the line. Hello, Tony.
Yes, Father.
Hi, where are you from?
I'm from Napa, California.
Great. And what is your question?
Well, my question for Leonardo is, I'm just interested in the actress Lindsay Younce. I thought she was terrific in the movie. Obviously, it was a key role for this film to succeed. I was wondering if he could tell us about how he found this young actress and her background and something about Lindsay Younce.
Thank you so much, Tony. Lindsay Younce is the actress that I found. It's a really, it is true what Tony mentioned. It's a real miracle story. I was looking for an actress for St. Therese, and the movie was going forward in the production, and I was getting desperate because we had a timeline. So I actually was walking by. We filmed all these young women and older women. I found a woman in L.A., actually, who looked like Therese. So we went down there, but then when I went down there, she was a little older than I thought. And so as women, when they send their photos to us, So I've lost that trail there. But what happened with Lindsay, I was walking by our staff who was doing all the videotaping of all the auditioning, and I saw this young girl, and I watched part of her audition. I said, I want to see that girl tomorrow. Find her. I have no idea who she was or where she's at. Get her in here somehow tomorrow. And they, in fact, did. But what happened was I had to go to Mass the next day, and we were going there's a huge traffic jam, so we went to a totally different church that I don't always go to. I went there, and I was praying to Jesus during the Mass, and all of a sudden I looked over in the corner, and there was this girl. There was the actress. She was over in the corner. And then all of a sudden I had this overwhelming feeling from God that she was the one. And I hadn't even met her. I hadn't even auditioned her. And I had an argument with God during the Mass. In the sense I said, God, are you sure? Are you sure that this is the one? Because there was no confirmation, except that a voice said to me, she's the one. So when I did audition her, I knew it right away, that my confirmation was true. Because what she did is she brought a purity to the role. And in fact, she was a Quaker. She wasn't even Catholic, but she was becoming interested in Catholicism. And a matter of fact, I think it was 4 years before we did the movie, 2 years before we did the movie, the Relics of Therese came. And she happened to be driving by this very same church and saw all these people. There was just tons of the crowd. Like you said, if you weren't a priest, you would never get in to see the relic.
Right.
Well, she stopped, not even knowing what was happening. She's not even Catholic. She walks into the church. You can't even get into the church because it's jam-packed even outside. And one of those old ushers, Catholic usher, comes up to the young girl and says, young lady, come here. Holds her hand, walks her right down to the front row and puts her in front of the relics. And she doesn't even know who St. Therese is at this moment. So when I find her and audition, all of a sudden she discovers Therese. And the beauty of this whole story, not only did she portray her so beautifully and faithfully, but she also becomes a Catholic after the film.
Oh,
and
nice.
It's a very touching story. And she's a beautiful young woman, and she has inspired people all over the world.
Now, one of the things about the movie is that it did get into the theaters.
Yes, it did.
How did it do? What was its run like in the theaters?
Well, it ran for 70 weeks in the theaters, so it was a long run for an independent film, and it got into the main, Regal Cinema, AMC, Century, all the different ones, and so it had a wonderful run. And it was based off of also how the people responded, as some of your audience members have mentioned, and even your callers, that they brought the movie, they worked to get the movie to come to their theaters.
Yeah, tell us about that, because a lot of times this was done by people trying to get the theaters to put it on.
Right, because St. Therese is not well known among Hollywood or that industry. What happened is we got the permission to get into the Regal system, say, or into the movie industry, but it had to be, we could only try to bring it to a certain city if the people would get behind it. And so what happened is, it was amazing what happened in certain, Detroit ended up becoming the #1 city in the country because of 2 women. They galvanized the people in the city, and they got her to come. Now you only got 1 weekend, If it doesn't do well on one weekend, it's gone. Hollywood takes it away. But I think in that case, it stayed almost 7 weeks in the movie theater, which is for a movie that's pretty remarkable. It's a long time. Yeah. And that happened in a lot of cities all over the United States. And so it was really a very, very touching thing how in fact, in some places, I know we were just talking about Louisiana, in Shreveport, Louisiana, when it was there, it's not a really Catholic area, but the people came for weeks and weeks, and the managers of the theater were so engaged, they've never seen so many well-behaved people come to a movie theater. And so he was sad to see the movie when it had to finally leave. Yeah. And he was almost saying goodbye to all the customers, you know. So there's been some amazing stories that have happened in that regard. So it was all through the efforts of people who believed in her, who wanted to honor her, who loved her and wanted to spread her devotion. Now,
the movie itself then was able to finance itself. It was able to, by being in the theater, you were able to pay back all the...
Right. We paid back the production, and what we did was, we're nonprofit, so we're not like looking at the end, like in a normal movie industry. You know, we got to take the profit and run, you know. What we did is we took every bit of profit, went back in to making it go to another city, and another city, and another city, and then preparing the way for the DVD release, and to do the normal things that you would do with a theater, and to get it into the other areas, into French and in Canada, and et cetera, and into Mexico, et cetera. So it really has been a very moving and touching journey as we've gone this whole way through.
Well, this brings us something in terms of the movie then truly being an apostolate. It's not a business project, but an apostolate, that you really see this as part of a mission to be able to bring this good news about this great saint to the modern world.
Well, exactly. As one priest said when he saw it, he said, this movie imparts grace. Grace flows from it. And it was very touching because we were mentioning earlier at dinner, but when the Ten Commandments came to India, and way back when, the priest said to the people in India, if you go to this movie, you will receive a blessing. And I think that's the same thing that happened with Therese, that those who are open, who are searching from spiritual answer or some consolation, got immense blessing from God, truly grace from God, to be open to His grace, and it transformed their life. As one woman, I remember, she came out of the movie, she wrote us right after, she came out of the movie, she leaned against her car, she was kind of overwhelmed by the movie after being so moved, and she got up and went right back in the movie and watched it again. I mean, that's how it impacted her. And that doesn't happen with movies.
Right.
You know, normally.
Right.
And so it was even though it was a movie, as you said, it was an apostolate, and all we wanted to do was plant the seed and let Therese do the rest.
Yeah. And just in our last couple minutes, your staff, you know, they also must be affected by this. Not only the actress converting, but tell us a little bit about how the staff is affected.
Oh, the staff and the crew. The crew on this movie worked so hard. They worked harder than most movie crews. I mean, they gave their hearts and souls to it. So it wasn't just for work's sake. It was for a mission to really get Therese out there. And they sacrificed so much. I'm proud of every one of them, the sacrifices they made, the lighting crew, the camera crew, the art direction, I mean, the costumes, the music, every little bit of it. Because everything took detail and effort, and no one slept. Some people didn't sleep sometimes for 48 hours straight. It was unbelievable how God got this movie miraculously filmed, and not only edited, but also into the movie theaters. So it was how we worked down and edited it in Los Angeles and Burbank. We did showings at Warner Brothers, and even we were doing some things at Disney and Sony, and eventually here it is. It was in the movie theaters. And now it's going to be on EWTN.
As a matter of fact, when you say now it's going to be on EWTN, we mean exactly that. It's going to be on now. Just in another minute and a half or so, we're going to be going over to the movie. And so It's really is a great thing that you've done. And, I'm definitely hoping that this will be not the end of what you're doing, but bringing this kind of movie. That was one of the things I remember at the outset, that bringing this kind of movie to the media and to the culture, this is what we need very much. I want to thank you for being with us tonight and for bringing the movie to EWTN so we can show it this evening. And I want to thank you for being with us. May Almighty God bless you and keep you and cause His face to shine upon you. May He lead you in all of your ways and guide you along His footsteps by His peace. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And remember, we can bring you Leonardo and all the other guests on the programs, and we can even bring you this movie tonight because this network is brought to you by you. You make this network possible, just as you made this movie possible. So please keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill, and we'll be able to pay all of our bills. Thank you.